Let's talk about the spectrum of anxiety. Anxiety, like everything, exists on a spectrum. On one end, there's high-functioning anxiety, and on the other end of the spectrum, there's low-functioning anxiety, and it can be anywhere in between. It's really important to acknowledge this because on the lower end of the spectrum, this is where people might be diagnosed with panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and even the simplest of tasks feel difficult when you're struggling on that lower functioning side. This is also where some severe trauma exists as well that limits a person because, like I said, everything feels difficult. They might be losing out on things in life. They might have severe panic attacks where it's difficult for them to work, to be in a relationship, to function. And this is where there might be some more rigorous treatment or more rigorous work that might be involved. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, there's what we call high-functioning anxiety. This is where a person might be struggling with something, but they won't know it's anxiety because they're not suffering with panic attacks. They might look at a person who has a panic disorder and say, that's not me. So I don't have anxiety, but I don't know what this feeling is. It's kind of living underneath the surface. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just destined to always feel like I'm on edge or like I'm at war with myself or like I doubt myself or I question my decisions. And there are so many different symptoms of anxiety and how it manifests that it might be really confusing as to where you fall on that spectrum. But here's what I found. Most people that are really high functioning, most people who are at the top of their careers or they're growing a career or they're an entrepreneur or they're even like CEO or a leader in their profession, they still meet up with these mental struggles. And some of those same mental struggles that once fueled them or pushed them are now holding them back. They sabotage them, they limit them. And we learn to function over here. We learn to function in chaos and conflict. We learn to just keep pushing, keep grinding, keep doing hard work. And this is where we learn just go, 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 go. Because for many of us, that's a trauma response. For many of us, we get caught up in hustle culture. Stress becomes the norm. We are the most functional one in our family, or we're the one that everybody relies on. And what happens is we get burnt out. Then it starts to sabotage us. It starts to sabotage our relationship. It sabotages our earning potential. It sabotages our sanity. And this is where high functioning anxiety can sometimes be worse and more detrimental than the lower functioning side. The reason why is because this is like anxiety in hiding. And people think this is normal and that there's nothing they can really do. This is just who they are. Where people on this end of the spectrum, these are usually the people that either seek out help because they feel like they need it more, or other people will come to them and say, hey, you really need help. And this is where people will go to therapy, they'll be medicated, where people over here, it doesn't feel like it's enough of a problem until it becomes too much of a problem. And this is what we call high functioning or hidden anxiety. And I sent out an email to my list the other day and I said, hey, I'm just want y'all to know, and there's about 20,000 people on my list, on my email list. And I said, just want everyone to know I've been known worldwide as the anxiety relief guy for a really long time, but that's a really wide, broad spectrum. So I get people on this end of the spectrum and I get people on this end of the spectrum. And it's really difficult sometimes to navigate because anxiety is so unique to the individual, but I've discovered something. And I know I'm not the only one to discover this. I know this isn't like a huge mind-altering, earth-shattering thing. What I've discovered, though, is that in the work that I've done with people, these people over here on the higher functioning hidden anxiety side are the ones that I work best with. And the reason being is because I was one of those people. And the reason why I was one of these people was because I grew up in alcoholism, addiction, substance abuse, in a family where that was running rampant. And I find that I'm really good at identifying and working with people who are adult children of alcoholics or substance abusers. I can talk to a client for about 3 or 4 minutes. And after they're describing some of the things that they're feeling or that they're experiencing, I'll ask them which parent or which family member was a substance abuser or an alcoholic. And they'll look at me inquisitively and they'll say, how did you know? And I'll say, because what you're describing, they're classic signs and symptoms of an adult child of an alcoholic, because I grew up in a family of substance abuse and addiction. And we develop these coping mechanisms. We develop coping mechanisms that keep us safe, that once helped us, that once protected us, but then they start sabotaging us. One of those coping mechanisms is just keep the peace. Keep the peace. Just do everything possible to keep the peace and avoid conflict, avoid confrontation, be the people pleaser, be the nice person, be the doer so you don't disappoint people. And we develop all of these coping mechanisms which later in life become toxic patterns, and they start to eat away at us. They cause burnout. They might even cause us to feel depressed, where we start to lose purpose. We start to question ourselves. We question, are we doing enough? And then what usually happens is we become the person that everybody relies on. We become the caretaker. We become the most functional one of the family. We become the one that cleans up everybody else's mess. And it can be exhausting. And then if we don't, we have this level of guilt. And if we don't clean up everybody else's mess, we have this level of, am I doing the right thing? Are people going to perceive me as this selfish, careless person? What happens if I'm perceived as that? I'm going to lose everything. If I don't take care of people, people are going to see, they're going to see that, and they're going to say, wow, that person's not the person I thought they were. And I don't want to have anything to do with people like that. And it causes all of these negative unconscious thoughts, which cause all of these conflicting feelings, which causes these reactions within us. And that's where we start to spiral down. And some of us, it happens earlier in life. Some of us, it doesn't happen until later in life. And many people I start working with in their mid 50s to early 60s, where they're just realizing that they've been programmed in that way and that it's actually sabotaging them. And it has sabotaged them for a very long time, and that's become their identity. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with people comes to identity, it comes to trauma, it comes to belief systems, and it comes to healing all those different parts, because what happens is these programs, these patterns that were once lifesavers, they become these toxic mechanisms within us that are caused by stuck emotions, and they get stuck in our nervous system. So to get back to this email I sent out an email the other day to my list, and I said, hey, I'm going to focus more on this category of people over here because I identify with being an adult child of a substance abuse and all the things that go along with it. And I've done my own inner work, and I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people do their own inner work as well, who also were adult children of substance abusers. And I remember sitting down when I was about 12, maybe 13 years old, sitting down with a therapist. And this therapist said, hey, Dan, and it was right around the time where I just started getting interested in hypnosis, and I had done a couple of hypnosis presentations by the time I was like 13, 14 years old. And I sit down with this therapist, and I remember sitting on the top floor of this big office building with him, and my mom was in the waiting room, and he said, you know, Dan, it's really interesting that you are a hypnotist and that you're learning all this about hypnosis. And I said, why? He said, because Hypnosis, when you hypnotize a bunch of people on stage, you are in control. Or it seems like that. That's not really what happens, but it seems like you're in control. But to some level, you are. You have a microphone, you have all these people, their eyes are focused on you. Like the spotlight is on you, right? And you are calling the shots. You're laying down the expectation. And he said, so interesting, because for the majority of your younger life, you were so out of control. You didn't have any control over what was going to happen, over the decisions that these people were going to make, because they were all based and fueled on the substances that they were consuming and allowing into their body and allowing to alter their mind. And he says, so it's just really interesting because you are coming at this from a place of, wow, being in this setting gives me a sense of control. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it really does. And then I started helping a lot of people who were feeling like I was. And I would say maybe I was in my mid-20s when I realized that those old coping mechanisms were actually becoming toxic. And I started to get angry. I started to get resentful. I started to turn a lot of that anger in on myself, asking like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not doing things I should be doing? Why is it no matter how hard I try and I get these bursts of success and then I just like collapse back down and all these other people rely on me and they're counting on me. And even in my early 20s, I'm like, I'm a leader in my profession, right? People were looking up to me. And I didn't feel worthy enough. I didn't feel like I should be in that position that I was in. I even did a TED Talk that had gotten millions and literally tens of millions of views across different social media platforms. And at some level, I'm like, I don't deserve this. And I can't have this. And it really started to get in the way of like, a lot of my friendships, my relationships, and people knew me as like the nice guy. And it really started to become my identity. So in my mid-20s, I started to realize that, and that's where I started to do a lot of my own inner work. And that's where I started to really find out that these were toxic coping mechanisms that were kind of building within me. So that's why when I work with people who are from, I would say like early to mid-30s, all the way up to like their mid to late 70s, they didn't realize that they've been stuck in this reactive mode for decades. And this is why they have made all these decisions. This is why they've made all of these toxic or have all these toxic patterns because of what happened to them. When they were younger, they learned they had to function in chaos, and they constantly scanned to look for problems, and they tried to solve the problems before they came up, so they would compromise their own integrity. And these are some of the patterns that I now help a lot of people with. Because when you are the people pleaser, when you are the caretaker, when you are the one that everybody counts on and relies on, people only know that part of you. They don't really ever get to experience the whole part of you, like who you really are. Because that's not who you really are. That's a role that you were conditioned and trained to play. So when I sent this email out the other day that, I'm now going to gear a lot of my messaging towards adult children of alcoholics and substance abusers, who these are people that like everyone relies on, everyone counts on. They're like kind of the family center. We take on like these caretaking roles. I got some pushback from some people, because then there's the people who are on this end of the spectrum, on the lower functioning side of the spectrum, who say, are you going to abandon us? I'm like, no. Absolutely not. Because the same things that help the people over here can also help the people over here on this side, on the lower functioning side. So my question to you is, where are you on that spectrum? Are you more on the lower functioning side of anxiety, which if you are, it's really good you know that. And how do you know you're on that lower functioning side? Like if you were to think of something that makes you feel uncomfortable, would you go do it or would you retreat and avoid it? Over here, on the higher functioning side, people feel uncomfortable about things and they say, I'm going to do it anyway because I've operated in discomfort my entire life. And what happens is we are in this constant reactive mode, and it's like we're always waiting for the next shoe to drop or walking on eggshells. And over here on this side, this is where it can also turn into physical complications like ulcers, IBS, tension headaches, even psychosomatic conditions like fibromyalgia. This is where hypertension, high blood pressure. This is where a lot of people don't realize the cause of a lot of their problems are living the majority of their life in brace for impact mode. So this over here, adult children of alcoholics and substance abusers, people who are the ones that everybody counts on, people who are the ones that are the go-to in their family, the most functioning ones, and in spite of everything else, they've still made really big wins in their life. Those are the people over here in this category, are the people that I not only enjoy working with, but I'm also really good at working with. I'm also good at working with the people over here and anywhere in between that spectrum. Yet these are the people over here where I'm like, they're like me, and they're like the person I used to be. And sometimes I'm still working through the same challenges that they're working through. Because what happens later in life is when you grow up in chaos and conflict because of the substance abuse that was happening in your family, what often ends up happening is you are now the caretaker for those same people that may have been the cause of the conflict and the chaos. And what you have to do in that situation is to see them through the eyes of love, compassion, innocence, and let go of any resentment. Let go of any anger or pent-up anxiety that you felt towards them, because you want to eliminate those triggers. So that's the work I help people do. That's work I love helping people do, so you can function even better, so you have more wins and losses, more breakthroughs and breakdowns, and so life just seems easier. We take off the edge, so you can even be even more true to who you are. So if that resonates, let me know. Leave a comment below and let me know what your experience has been. As always, be well, do good, be true to who you are, and happy healing.